Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here to welcome Kiese Laymon, the acclaimed writer from Jackson, Mississippi, and he's gonna read a story for us, and then we're gonna have a conversation after. So before I hand it over to Kiese, and hello Kiese, I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm going to just shout out a couple of people that kind of helped this thing happen. So starting out, the African American Studies program sponsored this event, and we very much appreciate them for doing that. And then it's co-sponsored by the English department at Mississippi State University. So thank you very much for doing those things. And now we'll get started. You know, I was thinking about how to introduce you because, you know, man, I've been reading your work for so long. I was like, man, I got to do them justice. And so I was like, man, I could read something, but, you know, I'm sure you know who Sway in the Morning is. So I'm gonna try to give you a Sway introduction, man. So
he be going off though, bro. Don't do that.
He does.
Don't give me the Sway.
So I'm gonna tell two quick stories for people listening again to understand just how important Kiese Laymon is. And so I was at Harvard for my PhD the last 4 years, and so I was going to an event that he was going to be a speaker at the Harvard bookstore, which is right across the street from Harvard's campus on Mass Ave. And so I had been there numerous times to hear different people speak. I had never seen it packed. You know what I'm saying? I heard very, famous writers, John Wideman, Cornel West, Henry Louis Gates, etc. You know, you could get there 10 minutes late and you could still get a seat real easy. And so, when I heard Kiese Laymon was coming, I had my long division in hand. I had my Mississippi State gear on, faithful, trying to represent. And so I get there, I say, let me get there about 15, 20 minutes early, just to be safe, because Kiese getting big now. So I was like, let me go ahead and get here early, just to see. And man, I could barely find a seat. It was already packed. And then by the time it started, you would have thought they were handed out free food. So I had never seen that many people come to Harvard bookstore. And that's when I realized, like, wow, Kiese Laymon is like really, he's one of the best writers in the country, but he's also one of the most famous. And that's rare to have both of those at the same time. And so I was like, wow, man, I'm in the presence of greatness. And so then, he gives a great talk. And then I get the honor to meet him for about just 1 or 2 minutes after. I wait in line. Everybody's trying to get to talk to him and things while he's signing books. And so, I have my long division and we talk a little bit, and I tell him I'm from Mississippi, and we talk about hip hop for a second. He said, you listen to David Banner. You asked me who was my favorite artist. I was like, man, probably David Banner, man, just for what he represents for the state. You were like, what's your favorite song? And so I was like, probably The South's on My Mind, what he did from when he was in Cricket Letters. And I just want to say a little bit about that song because it really kind of is a good segue into what you're going to do in this story. And so, the way this song starts is, nobody gives a damn about my place of origin. Jacktown, rounds and empty shells left on the ground. I'm still smoking. I'm hoping to get a kid something back and instead of just telling stories about selling vials of crack or women in cars. But the state left scars on my manhood. But y'all be acting like it's all good.
All good.
But it ain't never been. Most kids went to Chicago. They left. But those who didn't were left hollow.
We're left hollow, bro.
With low self-esteem, but it seems that all our dreams got crushed, but y'all want to keep it on the hush. Keep it on the hush. And so part of what I see you doing, man, you're doing the same thing because you're recognizing the people that didn't leave for Chicago and elsewhere, and you're telling us stories to help those people who didn't have that self-esteem. You're helping us heal through your literature, man. And I can think about the same things when I used to listen to Banner late at night walking back to my dorm, and it's like, and then I started reading you, and you were doing that same work of giving black kids, at least me, a certain sense of identity of what it meant to be a black man from Mississippi, and then leaving and trying to work through what all that meant. And so, man, I appreciate you doing it. I know you're not just doing it for me, you're doing it for a ton of people around the state. And, I'll let you read the story and then we'll have a conversation. So thank you so much for speaking to us at Mississippi State, Kiese.
Oh my God, Phil, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, bro. Yep.
Oh, fam, fam, I'm gonna read because y'all asked me to, but I could just talk to you about what you just did and said. I'm gonna be brief. Maybe we can come back to it after. David Banner and I, like, we differ politically, right? We got different political. We actually got a lot of the same political dimensions, but there's a little bit of political dimension that's different, right?
Right.
One of the things that I'm always gonna love and owe Banner for is what you like when you're walking around Harvard's campus. Banner connected you to home, right?
Yep, that's it.
Man, 20 years ago, I'm walking around Indiana University's grad school campus wondering, like, should I write myself out of my work like these folks are asking me to, or do I like dig deeper into like the folk ways that made us?
Right.
And I couldn't find many contemporary models, so I had to look to hip hop journalists. Charlie Braxton was doing it. He gave me wings. But bruh, that Crooked Letters came out that year. I was in grad school, and Banner, Real Talk, and Kamikaze
Yep.
are responsible for so much of the art that I've created, fam.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So the fact that Banner could do that for you and do that for me when I was in school is a testament to Banner, but also a testament to where we from, right? I mean, a testament to home.
Yep.
And fam, when we met, the thing is, and this is where it starts to get a little like spooky and spiritual, and some people tune out. But like, I did feel like I knew you. I've been talking about this essay last 2 weeks so hard. But Ellison wrote this essay. I'm sure you know it. Little Man at Chihal Station.
Oh yeah, I know. And go out to the territory.
Going to the territory, man. That was my Bible around the same time that I was Crooked Letters was hitting me. But the thing about that essay is that Ellison is really telling you. We need to talk about the gender dimensions of it, and we need to talk about the fact that Ellison is saying when you performing that jazz in these places, there's a janitor or someone in that space who knows the shit better than you.
That's it.
And when I write and create feel, fam, like I have been imagining you and versions of you my entire life. Like that was how I got free, like writing to feel before I knew feel. So I'm gonna read this little piece called "Our Kind of Ridiculous." I haven't read this version of this piece ever.
Okay. Wow.
It's probably going to be like 10, 12 minutes or so. And then we're going to have a conversation. I haven't read it. So I hope it's all right.
All right.
Kind of ridiculous. When I was 24, I flew paper airplanes past the apartment of a 32-year-old white boy named Trimp in Emmaus, Pennsylvania. Trimp rocked a greasy brown mullet, bragged about ironing his bleached leaves, and said the word use a lot. Even with the caked up cornbread still in the cracks of his teeth and a raggedy mustache that looked like it was colored by a hyper 6-year-old, Trimp always reminded me of somebody who was once cute. Trimp, whose apartment was directly above mine, lived with 2 women. One was his girlfriend, she could see. One was his wife, she could not. 3 little boys lived in the apartment with Trimp and his 2 partners. The youngest boy was Trimp's girlfriend's child. The miniature Viking loved to run his muddy hands through his blonde hair and grin when he wasn't growling. The other 2 boys looked like they rolled around naked in a tub of melted Tootsie Rolls before coming out to play. I was in Pennsylvania working on my grad thesis while my girlfriend at the time interned at Rodale Press. So I had spent most of my life in Mississippi, close to black folk who were 30 cents away from a quarter. That summer in Emmaus, Pennsylvania was the most intimate I'd ever been with white folk who barely had a pot to piss in. After paying our rent, food, and utilities, Nicole and I had about $140 left in disposable income every month. And that $140 made us feel quite bougie. It was the first summer I hadn't worked as a phone book delivery man, a waiter at Ton of Fun, a healthcare assistant at Grace House, a knife salesman at Cutco, a bootleg porter at the Bowie House, a counselor at Upward Bound, or a summer school teacher at Indiana University. I was on a fellowship, which meant for the first time in my life, my job was simply to collect a small check in exchange for not wasting reading and writing's time. During the day when I wasn't reading and writing, I made paper airplanes and talked outside with Shay, our 8-year-old neighbor, Barry, her 6-year-old brother, and Trimp's kids. For most of the summer, Trimp's kids looked into our empty apartment through a huge sliding glass door. At first, they would stand about a foot from the door looking directly at their reflections in our empty living room. A week or so into the summer, all 3 of Trimp's kids started smashing their faces against the door and running their muddy hands up and down the glass. Shay and Barry had what my grandmama called that good home training. They simply watched Trimp's kids watch us from a distance and whispered into each other's ears. Our apartment held 1 chair, 1 desk, a blow-up bed, a fridge covered in magnets, and a cranky Mac computer. While Trimp's place smelled like fried meats, thin gravy, sticky fruit punches, and nappy carpet that rarely got vacuumed, our place smelled like new paint and feet. Miseducation, ATLians, Aquemini, and the greatest hits of Joni Mitchell and Curtis Mayfield worked to shield our ears from Trimp's mashup of Zeppelin, short people screams, laughter, and that goddamn Cartoon Network. One July weekend, somebody got shot in the building next to ours. As soon as the police left, Trimp and I walked over to see what we could. As we walked, Trimp asked me how to pronounce my name. He'd heard his kids call me Keith, and he'd heard Nicole call me Key, or Keese. After I told him that Keith was fine, he asked me if he could borrow $10. I told him that I'd give it to him when we got back to our building. Trimp and I kept walking and talking about his odd family arrangement and the money a little while longer before he asked me if people got shot a lot where I was from. I stopped to look him in the eye and see if he was asking a question he really wanted an answer to. Trimp would not look back. I didn't tell Trimp anything about missing Mississippi or how I was reckoning with the fact that a friend of mine had taken a young woman into the central Mississippi woods and blown her brains out and was now serving a life sentence. I ignored Trimp's question completely and asked him about Pennsylvania amusement parks, Italian ices, and when he planned on getting a job. After he answered all my questions, Trimp got really close to my face. He looked up at me and didn't run from my eyes for the first time. Keith, you should move down here, Keith, he said. I'm serious. You's different. You's ain't like your kind. He kept saying it too, absolutely sure that he'd given me that gift that a number of white folks I met love to give black people at the strangest time. The gift of being decidedly different from all them other niggas. It felt like Trimp wanted a pat on the back for not saying the word nigga, 2 pats for distinguishing one nigga from another nigga, and 3 pats for inching closer to the realization that black Americans were never what he called niggas in the first place. On the way back from the murder site, Trimp walked ahead of me. I gripped his bony shoulder before we got to the hill leading up to our building. I asked him if his greasy mullet, his 2 in-house partners, his caved-in chest, his white baby kids, and his belief in niggas made him different than his kind. I ain't racist, Keith, he kept saying. That's so sweet, I told him. Trimp wiggled free of my grip and walked up the hill to our building. I caught up with him outside of our glass door. I told him that the problem was that the niggas he believed in knew so much more about his kind than even he did, and that the niggas he believed in were taught to never ever be surprised by the slick shit that came out the mouths of white folk. Then I got all graduate school on him and spouted some mess about dissonance and dissemblance and white absolution and how it might be impossible for him to know if I was different than my kind if he didn't know himself. Trimp turned his back on me and all my big words. He walked upstairs to his family and slammed his door. I walked into our apartment, partly disappointed that I didn't slap the taste out of Trimp's mouth, and mostly ashamed that there was so much more that I wanted him to say. If white American entitlement meant anything, it meant that no matter how patronizing, unashamed, deliberate, unintentional, rich, poor, rural, urban, ignorant, intellectual, and destructive white Americans were, black Americans were still encouraged to work for them, write to them, listen to them, talk with them, run from them, emulate them, teach them, dodge them, and ultimately thank them for not being as fucked up as they could be. That's part of what I learned in Emmaus, Pennsylvania. Trimp avoided me for the rest of the summer, but his kids kept banging their muddy hands on our glass door every morning. A few days after Trimp said I was different than my kind, his youngest child walked into our apartment and started playing with the word magnets on the refrigerator. I placed the words wash your dirty face and hands, sometimes boy, in a line, and asked him to read that sentence. Trimp's son looked at the words and moved around. He smiled and then he clapped his muddy hands like he was lightweight touch before proudly saying, "Nope, I can't even read, Keith. Nope, I can't even read." The little muddy joker said it the way you would expect a white child to say, "Gee, I found the treasure. Yep, I really found the treasure. I laughed in that child's face for a good minute and a half. Deep, terrible, sad laughs. And he laughed back, thinking I was laughing with him. For worse, never better, nothing I saw or heard or smelled or touched or felt from Trimp and his family surprised me that summer. I cannot say the same thing about myself. A month or so after I laughed at that little boy's illiteracy, two of Nicole's friends came to visit. I don't remember much about Nicole's friends, except one of them was the roundest short adult I'd ever met. And she tried too hard not to sound like she was white and from rural West Virginia. Every few seconds, she managed to throw the words ridiculous and totally into something that wasn't ridiculous or totally anything. Nicole drove a tiny green Geo Metro that I couldn't drive because it was a stick, and also because my license was suspended. The four of us piled into a Geo Metro and headed to Lilith Fair concert in Hershey, Pennsylvania. The concert wasn't Fresh Fest, and I didn't love the wet fog of patchouli and weed or the lack of my kind at the show, but it ended up making me smile and feel a lot. After the concert, we stopped at a gas station before leaving Hershey and headed back to Emmaus. A few minutes after we got on the interstate, I reminded Nicole to turn on her headlights. Seconds later, we heard the siren. A young white cop came to Nicole's side and pointed his flashlight at me in the passenger seat. I asked him if I could open the glove compartment to get her registration. He told me to keep my hands in plain sight. I laughed at him. See? I said to Nicole. An older white cop came up from behind us and approached my side. Both cops walked to the front of the Geo, talked for a second, and then told me to get out of the car. For what? I asked, trying to fake laugh. Because we saw you throw crack out of the window. I sucked my teeth. I don't even drink or eat meat, I told the cop. I don't even drink or eat meat? What the? I pointed toward the field and told both cops again that I did not throw no crack out the window and that could all go look for the crack if they wanted to. When I raised my hands, the bigger cop put his hand on his gun and told me to put my hands on the car. He patted me down and handcuffed me while Nicole watched from the driver's side, and her ridiculously round friend sat quietly in the back, talking to the girl whose voice I cannot remember. Blackness is probable cause, I tell myself. I'm handcuffed in front of the flashing blue lights of a parked police car and a green Geo Metro. I've had guns pulled on me before, and I was never this afraid. But this feels so different. The handcuffs hurt more than the thought of the bullets, and the two cops with deep frown lines placed me in the back of a police car. For my own good, they say. As a parade of mostly drunk white folk on their way home from Lilith Fair drive down the highway, looking in our direction. Humiliation. I'm guilty of being too much like my kind, which means I'm one mistaken movement from being a justifiable homicide, or a few planted rocks from being incarcerated. This is American law in Hershey, in Jackson, in Indiana, in Ohio, in Minnesota, in Louisville. This is American life. But another kind of American law and another kind of American life is happening to the women that I was driving from the concert with, who are now behind the Geo. Two cops are touching the women in ways they would never touch me. They're watching their bodies in ways they would never watch mine. They're talking down to them in tones that say, I want the chance to fuck you, and if you don't give me the chance to fuck you, I want to fuck you up. The cops laugh and smirk whenever the women say anything. I'm watching the police search Nicole's car. They pull out a backpack from the trunk. The older cop reaches in the backpack and grabs what looks like condoms that they gave out at Lilith Fair. He holds the backpack up in the face of the women and shakes his head. This is American law. This is American life. I'm wondering what will happen if I kick the door open and ask the cops, yo, y'all remember Tang? Cause can I pour a whole container of dry Tang in your throat until you throw up and your uniform be covered in that thick, dark orange? It'll look like blood, but it won't taste like blood though. It will not taste like blood though. I'm wondering if Nicole, who is now standing at the back of her green Geo Metro talking to one of the cops, will think that I could have actually thrown crack out of her passenger side window. I'm wondering if Nicole's wondering if she ever really knew me. From the backseat of the police car, I'm watching this blinking blue field where my con has thrown lots of invisible, and maybe not so invisible, crack. I convince myself that Mississippi is on the other side of that field, and I want to run. For a second, though, truth be told, I'm wondering if I actually did throw crack out of that window. Sitting in the back of that police car in handcuffs that have been wrapped around the wrist of so many of my kind, I'm wondering if there's a chance that I am what, not who, Trimp and them think I am. One of the cops comes to the back of the car I'm sitting in and he tells me to get out. I thought you said we wouldn't find nothing in your bag, he says, shaking a pack of condoms in my face. As calm as I can, still water cradling my eyes, I say, you should find the crack you saw me throw, or you should let me go. The cops make some comment about my mouth, and then they take the handcuffs off. I want to run to Mississippi. All the people you could have stopped, and you chose us, I say with my hands pressed against my thighs. Cars filled with white folk keep passing us. They're all watching, mostly knowing what my kind is capable of. I wonder if Trimp is in one of those cars. I wonder how many of my kind saw me handcuffed on the side of the road that night. You stay safe now, the officer says. Just doing her job, man. That was so ridiculous, Nicole's friend says, and keeps saying from the back seat as we head home. I mean, that was like totally ridiculous. No one else is saying a word. Nicole is driving 8 miles per hour below the speed limit. As we get closer to Emmaus, Nicole's friend starts replaying what happened from the beginning of the concert to the cops, saying that I threw crack out of the window. She nervously says totally and ridiculous a few more times. She never says the words afraid, angry, worried, complicit, tired, or ashamed. I think I understand why. We got out of the Geo and saw the blue flickering of the TV on the upstairs balcony of Trimp's apartment. Trip and his family were watching something with a loud laugh track. Our sliding glass door was covered in new muddy smudges. I walked into the smaller bedroom of our apartment. While Nicole's friend kept replaying what happened for the third time in the living room, I dug my feet into the carpet of the bedroom and tried to push myself through the wall. Nicole knocked on the door. You all right? She asked me. I'm good, I said. For real. You should go and spend some time with your friends. They all right? I'm good. Nicole looked at me like she wanted to say everything was going to be okay. I wanted her to say that we were the collateral damage of a nation going through growing pains. And part of me wanted us to hug and agree each other to death that we were better people than we actually were. Nicole kept staring at me through the silence when we heard some thumping and screaming upstairs. I told her that I was sorry for being a dick, but I just wanted to read and write before going to bed. I grabbed my notebook and told myself I was going to use that day as fuel to finish a chapter I was writing about 4 kids in Mississippi who time traveled through a hole in the ground. The kids think that time travel is the only way to make sense of their state and their nation. They want the world to stop trying to write them off the face of the earth. While scribbling away at a chapter, I get stuck on these 2 sentences that one of the characters sees written in the sawdust of a work shed in 1964. We are real Black characters with real character, not stars of American racist spectacle. Blackness is not probable cause. We are real Black characters with real character, not stars of American racist spectacle. Blackness is not probable cause. We are real Black characters with real character, not the stars of American racist spectacle. Blackness is not probable cause. We are real Black characters. ... After what happened that day, all that really mattered was making it to those clunky sentences. Everything else, for better or worse, including Trimp's intentions, the nasty work of the police, and all of my shame, was as light as the paper airplanes I threw past Trimp's apartment. And making it to that point, as quiet as it's kept, felt like the most that one of my kind could ask for. A few minutes from some invisible crack, not that many miles from central Mississippi, and directly beneath the apartment of an American white boy from Emmaus, Pennsylvania, who needed to say, "You're kind," way more than and one of y'all might be able to imagine. All right. Thank you, bro.
All right, thank you so much for that, Kiese. So before I dig into some questions, I actually need to give a quick introduction again. I think they said they didn't get it, so I just want to make sure everybody knows where I'm not gonna do the long thing I did last time. But
They didn't hear that. They didn't hear you do
I
that.
don't think they heard it. I think so, but I'm just gonna say, for everybody tuning in, this is Kiese Laymon, an acclaimed writer from Jackson, Mississippi, who just read a story, "I Kinda Ridiculous." And now we're gonna have a conversation about it. And shout out to the African American Studies program and the English department for sponsoring and co-sponsoring this event. But wow, man, this is a great story. I guess one place I want to start is I guess for people who are reading along with the paperback version, if you look on 120, he says 122. He says, "I convinced myself that Mississippi's on the other side of that field." And at the top of the paragraph, and what makes that so ironic to me, I was just assigning my students the narrative of Henry Watson. It's the only slave narrative set in Mississippi. I'm sure you know that, but for those listening in, he gets sold for Virginia. He takes the march down in the internal slave trade post 1808, and then he ends up in Natchez getting sold at Forks of the Road, second largest slave market after New Orleans. Then he ends up in Natchez for a while, ends up in Vicksburg for a while, ends up all around the state. Then he leaves for Boston, then in England. So this is a tradition of normally people run the field, they run away from Mississippi. So when I hear you say you convince yourself that Mississippi's on the other side of the field and you want to run to it. I'm just curious, what were you up to with that? You kind of flipping the narrative of the slave narrative and the migration narrative. So
yeah, man. I was trying to flip it, and actually I was trying to be honest, bro. Like I was I don't know if you experienced this, but sometimes you realize exactly how far away from home you are when you actually realize you're closer to home than you really are. Right. And so while I never have invested in that idea that the North was less racist, I did not think it would be as particularly racist as it was, And one of the things that I think makes Northern racism, particularly like carcerality, like so particular, is like, bro, like, I done had cops pull guns on me in Mississippi.
Right.
And I'm about to say something people might disagree with, but every cop who tried me in Mississippi, I'm a writer, bro. Like, I look in their eyes, like they know that I got family with guns just like they do.
There it is.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And while I for different reasons, and we can talk about them or not, I do not believe in gun. I do not believe in guns for myself, just like I don't believe in prison. I think when I'm at home, I never felt what I felt in that police car, partially because my people. I got my people. You know what I'm saying? And as we know, like that does not stop them from incarcerating us and finding like innovative ways to punish us and throwing us under the jail.
Right.
But the feeling I had being in the back of that police car compared to being in the back of police cars in Mississippi was like I was just all alone, fam. Like I really, for the first time in my life, I was like, and I'm telling you, fam, like cops done held guns to my head, and I knew I wasn't alone. I knew if they pulled that trigger, they was gonna get got tomorrow or the next day, no question. No question, because we got people.
Right.
I ain't had no people up north, and that's why I came back home.
Right.
Because I ain't had no people up north.
That's deep. Wow. So there's so many ways I could go with that. I mean, one thing you're evoking is really just this, and it's understudied because the Academy doesn't like to think about they don't realize how radical the South was. But, for people listening in, Akinyele Umoja, just read his book on, what's it called? Armed Resistance. We will shoot back. The armed resistance in the Black Freedom Movement. And you'll see there's a tradition starting with the Civil War and Blacks movement, and then Charles Caldwell and the Black Republican Party before it switched. It's been this tradition. Read Ann Moody's story, you'll see the same thing. And so, what you're getting at is that there's this history of us, and of course, you talked about in other interviews, your family history with NRA. The New Republic of Africa. And so there's a long tradition in this in the state of Mississippi of Black people fighting back. And a lot of people don't know that part. A lot of people think we sat back and we took it. You know, they talk about the nadir of African American history. And it was tough. It was hard. But what they're not telling is that we also fought back. And so that's deep. Yeah.
And you know what, Phil? Like, that's the part of what I think some of us bring from down home.
Right.
That I'm not gonna say the North don't know how to deal with, but some of us come from down home and then we get in these like cloistered kind of settings, and they definitely don't know how to deal with us in those settings, because like, I'm gonna ask you this question, and I think I know the answer, but I think if I asked 100 black men, 100 black women, 100 black girls, 100 black boys, 100 genderqueer folks from Mississippi, I think the answer would be the same. Are your grandparents alive?
So they all are dead now, but my grandma, my maternal grandmother died about a year, a little bit ago. She was the last one. But I knew my paternal grandparents had died when I was very young. Yeah.
All right. So your maternal grandparent mother, who you knew, if white cops step on their porch and step into their house, what's gonna happen?
Hey, it ain't gonna be nice. Yeah.
It ain't no question.
Right. It ain't no question.
Ain't no question. Ain't no question.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is that's not just like speculation, like that's a politic.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
Politic. Yeah.
And the white police down Mississippi, as fucked up as they are, there's like, this is crazy. I'm not giving them credit, but like there's certain things that they know not to do. The cops up north don't know. They don't know, fam. And let me just say something else. I've never said this, but again, man, whenever I talk to folk from home, I just like, there's some unlocks. And yes, that history is real fucking history. And you know, I on my fam, like my grandparents pop cops. I can say that now because they did, and they ain't gonna get in trouble. My grandparents pop cops, and my grandfather went to Parchment for popping cops. Wow. My granny, who's still alive, has a story that I'm gonna tell if she dies. So I come from people who are like, we are going to have a massive amounts of home training. We're gonna try to do our work the way you tell us to do. We're gonna take disrespect at this job. But if you dare to disrespect us in our place, in front of our folks, you are not going home to your people. No question. That's why I can't have no fucking guns, bruh. Right. And there's a part of my history that I haven't told, that I'm not ready to tell until my mom and them say I can. But like, some of us can't have guns. Right, and I think some of us need to know we can't have guns, and we shouldn't have guns because we hurt the people closest to us more often than not. And sometimes these cops know. You can look in their eyes when they know if you step wrong, nigga, you getting fucked up, period. And I never experienced that up north. Up north, they like, it's a different, there's no fear. These cops don't have no fear. And it's paradoxical, but I think you know what I'm saying.
Well, just to follow up, man, you know, you pulling things out of me as well, you know, and again, this is Black History Month for everybody listening in, so we're going to tell y'all the real truth about things, man. So my granddaddy and grandmother, you know, my granddaddy grew up in Holmes County, man, in Lexington, Mississippi. This man went through a swamp to get to Vicksburg and escape the plantation. And he still felt complicity for telling the man who told him how to get out, because he said, I don't know what happened to the man that told me how to get out that plantation, because I worry if he got caught, he might have got in trouble. But I say all that to say, man, my granddad was a preacher, man, civil rights activist, Freedom Summer, all that stuff. You know, he was a part of it. One of the few black preachers that had the courage to really stand up to the police. He told me this when I got a little older. He said, man, every time I preached, I was strapped. He said, every time. Every time. People don't know that part. People don't know that part. People don't understand that exactly this tradition of armed resistance. And it also goes back to demographics. You know, you talk about this a lot.
Exactly.
You know, and that's why white Southerners have had such a fear. Because in the parts of Mississippi we from, you know, Jackson, 85, 90% black, Vicksburg like 60% now, but you know, back in the day we was even more. And so the thing is, and back to this thing, when we go to other places, it's no tradition of collective action of that scale, right? Because black people gonna do their thing wherever, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, but of that scale, you can't find it anywhere but in Mississippi. You can't find it nowhere else. So yeah. No.
Oh, man. I feel that. Wait, Phil, let me ask you this. I can't see you anymore. Can you see me?
I can see you. Let me see.
Okay.
I'm trying to
It's
hear
all
that.
right. It's okay. I just want to make sure you can see me and I can, because I can't see you. So I just want to
I
make
can.
sure.
Let me see if I turn. Wait, can you see me now?
No, it's just frozen. My right side of my screen is frozen, but it's all good. If it's all
Okay.
good for everybody, it's all good for me. I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. Appreciate it. Yeah. But nah, man, I'm happy we went that direction, man. So how about I ask you a little bit about, you talk about how Black Americans are still encouraged to work for them, write to them, listen to them, talk with them, run from them, emulate them, etc. And I think about your work in terms of you've always been very candid in terms of saying, listen, I'm trying to write to Black people back home, and of course you wrote heavy in particular to your mother, and you always said your audience is always starts with the people close to you, then you zoom out to Jacktown, then you say zoom out to Mississippi. You know what I'm saying? You kind of give us little layers to it, and so tell me about you talked about this in terms of how hard is it sometimes to fight that publishing. And I know you had your different battles hence this book we have now. But just talk about what it means to write to Mississippi and the different things you had to kind of overcome to get to that point.
Yeah, fam. Like I'll try to be so brief, but the terrifying thing about being educated in Mississippi formally, which is different than growing up, right? I don't give growing up to people who did not want to see me live. So like formal education was one thread of growing up, but it wasn't all growing up and it wasn't all education. Like I was informally educated and actually formally educated in my house superbly. But the formal education in these classrooms, I mean, I don't know, fam. There's just like a brutality to a lot of what we experienced growing up in these classrooms, given the possibility. And that's what I feel about us in Mississippi. And generally, like when you think about white folks in Mississippi, it's like the choice that is most beneficial to their own health, to their own understanding of Christianity, is often the choice that appears to be siding with Black people. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But they consistently make the fucking wrong, and I think destructive choice for themselves in a desire to get us. And you don't have to read a gazillion books to see and describe that. You have to, I think, be touched by different kinds of art to have the will to make that critique out in the world. But my problem as a young person was that my mama taught me to watch and see and listen. And like, I'm like, we in these classrooms, we've been in this classroom for 4 years, and I ain't never heard the teachers say the word sexism. I ain't never heard the teachers say the word racism. I ain't never heard the teachers say the word depression. I ain't never heard the teachers say the word post-traumatic stress disorder. I ain't never heard the teachers say the word poverty, fam. All of that shit was dictating how we moved in that classroom, how the teachers talk to us. But if you don't name what's in between us, in the cracks of our fucking teeth, in our goddamn, nail beds and shit, you ain't talking to us. And you really ain't talking to yourself. So in my writing, my art, I just sort of sometimes want to do to the page and to the reader what I wish was done to me. You know what I mean? Which is like to cradle, to be honest, to push, to provoke, and to admit that I'm scared as fuck.
Right.
That's what I think our teachers did not do to us. Wow. And I understand why, because it wasn't done to them or the people who taught those other people.
Right.
But, we can't go back and redo shit, but we can be honest about what we've done. Right. And I think we need more teachers, and I am a teacher, and like, bruh, like I literally tried to do bad things to myself about the ways that I failed as a teacher and used my position as a teacher to harm and to hurt and to fail even more, fam. So these teachers, like, we got to be better at thinking about the ways we wield this shit, how unprepared we are because we were not taught to be prepared. But also, we can't like revise that if we don't go back and name it, for ourselves.
Right. Wow, man, that's deep. Well, hey, I'm gonna actually go off script, man. I know you read this story, but I want to just hit on, you talking about education and teaching, man. I want to tell you something you taught me. You didn't know this, but when I read Heavy, I know people, when they talk about Heavy, they talk about sometimes things that I think more parts that are more, they like to sensationalize things. Certain people I've seen interview you, and I didn't even understand where these questions were coming from. But long story short, the part of heavy that got me, and it gets to this part about, you know, you growing up in Mississippi in the 80s and so forth, man, was I had to stop and put the book down, man. I was like, man, it's too close. When you were talking about your mother, man, in Margaret Walker's house, and, you know, that's what I mean by you write to Mississippians, because you were talking about Mavis and Fordyce.
And the thing is, what I hope you appreciate is there ain't no comma. Let me tell non-Jacksonites, the Jacksonians, or Mississippians who these people are. Exactly. You know what I mean? Like that's how they sometimes get us to break the narrative and break the trance. You know, I'm not finna I use this name, catch up. You got Google shit.
Yeah, but when you talked about that scene, man, when you were talking about how, I think it was your mother, Margaret Walker, had told you, do you know we 40% of the population? If we can just get 1/5 of the white folks to do right, we have the state.
That's my mama, bro.
That was your mom who said that. I wasn't sure if it was your mama, Margaret, who said that line. Okay.
Yeah, she said it, but she said it in the car. She was picking me up. I remember, like, man, she's picking me up from that white school. That's what she said. That's been her whole shit since she was 19. She was like, wait a minute, right? Like, if we are primed to be the most just, loving, radical black state in the union. But what we sadly need a little bit of these white folk to kind of like stop believing in niggas. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
like,
there it is.
A little bit of that.
Yeah. Nah, that's deep, man. So I mean, you're doing it. I mean, I'm curious, you know, you talk about the different songs you were playing in the background. You know, when you were writing this, you talk about ATLians, Equimini, Miseducation. You know, I've heard you talk about the different ways, you know, this collection of essays it was kind of like an equivalent of a music album. And so I'm just curious about how much did Lauryn Hill mean to you? How much did Outkast, Big Boy, them, Andre 3 Stacks, you know, what did they mean to you, and how are you trying to kind of, you know, kind of work in conversation with them?
Yeah. Oh man, that question landed different right now, fam. I'm talking to one of the geniuses of our time, pre-times, and future times tonight, Regina Bradley, who has this incredible book chronicling Stankonia.
There it is.
Which is, to this point, like the actual like reckoning with what Outkast and Trap and like the music that shaped us did, and what it's doing literarily. And you know, she's tying it to like Jasmine, and she's tying it to some of the stuff I did in Long Division. Right. It's just ill. So I could talk about Cass all day, but people don't usually talk to me about Lauryn. Yeah. And fam, like, you know, Heavy has more in common with Miseducation than maybe any album. You know, like I was so inspired. I mean, Miseducation, she tells you in the title, it literally is about like formal and informal ways we educate and are educated. And, you know, I just thought it was at the time, I thought it was like the best album ever. I mean, like I thought Miseducation was the greatest album ever for a while. And that was a big deal for me because like I grew up in the 80s. Right. You never want to diss Michael Jackson's work or Prince's work. But Miseducation, she did something new with the confessional. I think she did something new with like the expectation that you about to listen to hip hop, you know, like on X Factor when it starts, you know how the double dutch shit that MCs do, yo, trying to find the beat. Yeah. It's not like by accident the X Factor starts with her trying to find the beat, like she's doing a hip hop song. And she's talking to someone who's harmed her, an actual person, right? Or a fictional person, but she's also talking to hip hop in that song, right? Like, and so like to me, almost all of the songs are as textured and layered, and it's not even like you have to do deep reading to see it. And the voice, fam. So Miseducation, like it was just that soulful like coaster, you know. And at the other side, because it came out at the same time, you know, Miseducation is right here. Yeah. Equimini is right here. Fam, like they come out right there, you know?
Wow. And, I didn't even realize that was Lauryn Hill. So Lauryn Hill was what, 94?
Nah, Lauryn Hill came out in 98.
Okay, 98. Oh, you talking about, that was Southern Cadillac was the one that was 94. Right, I see what you're saying.
94 was Southern Cadillac, but Southern Cadillac and Goody Mob was actually kind of bigger than Cass for a minute back then, you know?
Wow, that's
and then
crazy.
comes out with, I mean, Goody Mob, bro. Soul Food was
Yeah. Yeah, I listened I only listened to a couple of songs. I never got into them like deep, but I listened to about 3 or 4 songs they put as well. But yeah, I'm curious then about the Lauren. I mean, what do you make of everything that happened after and the whole situation of, man, the black artists, man, and the different struggles? I'm just curious, man. I mean,
you know what I'm saying, fam? Like this is like, I just gotta say, like, there's certain people I'm never gonna talk about publicly in a way. Like, I'm not gonna be critical of Lauren here. Like I'm not saying you're asking me to.
Oh no,
but
I wasn't even going down that route.
No. I know you're not. But my impulse is like, let me talk honestly. I mean, let me talk. But like, you know, because everybody, you know, does some things that, you know, if you're watching, you think, you know, you might think a little different of.
Right.
But I'm never gonna diss Lauren Hill publicly. I don't give a fuck what she does. But I will say this.
Yeah.
When I was in Austin, for some awards show, for Kirkus Awards, I was going back to the airport, and at that time they had a driver driving me in a truck, and the driver just kept like looking up and looking down at me. I'm like, what the fuck is? And then I'm in the back of a truck, bro. And I'm just like, yo, what is going on? And there was this white woman, probably about 55, and then I kept looking in the mirror for the back seat, and she's like, and I caught her eye. She's like, I'm sorry, but she said it in a way that like made the car jerk.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's all good, fam. What's wrong? She's like, oh, I just carried somebody yesterday, and they told me don't ever look them in the eye. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah. She's like, do you mind if I look you in the eye? And all I say is, the person that she had just driven was someone we talking about. You know what I'm saying?
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
Like, so. But I don't care. And everybody got a story like that about Lauren Hill, right?
Right.
But I want motherfuckers to also, when they tell that story, talk about what miseducation or any of the, because, you know, shit, she was the marrow of the Fugees. Like, talk about what her art has allowed you to do, in addition to talking about she didn't come to the concert on time and all that shit we talk about. Okay. But what did her art do to you? Because I guarantee you it's worth more than $9.99 or whatever the fuck you used to pay for art. You know what I'm saying? So like we got to be sort of better at talking about the people who made parts of us capable. Yeah, she might be late. Yeah, this, that, and the third.
Right.
But all of that shit don't compare to the fact that she created art that carried us out of some of the worst places in our lives.
Carried us.
That's true.
There it is. I mean, she's really the direct link when you think about, say, you know, Carter G. Woodson in terms of the miseducation of the Negro and all these kinds of things, and she's flipping it, you know, and so that's important. I mean, I'm curious to hear more about just what it meant to, you know, you talk about I want to run to Mississippi, right, and then you end up coming back to Mississippi. And, you know, I've heard you say, you know, in some ways you're able to write better in Mississippi. What was it like? What did it do for you, the state?
Coming back?
Yeah.
Oh, bruh. I mean, coming back, you know, like I knew that once if I could make it back home, and I don't want to be like sentimental and kind of lie, you know, like I always knew that I wanted to come back to Mississippi with like a person like me, like honest, like my temperament and stuff. Like I can't just come back to Mississippi and not have no power, you know what I mean? Like I'm not saying it for nobody else, but I got to come back with a little something. So I couldn't come back and have no money. I had to come back with a little bit of money. I couldn't come back with no books. I had to come back with a few books. But you know, like the cool thing about being black is that people always underestimate you. So like I came back to Mississippi knowing that my life and career were about to shift. You know what I'm saying? I knew I was sitting on heavy. I knew I was sitting on a whole lot of other essays and things. And I had a plan. Right. But I didn't talk about that. But Mississippi, like, allowed me to tap into sort of like rhythms and stuff that you see in heavy, and you know, it got me closer to my granny. But also, fam, you know, it ain't all sweet though. Like the work that I've done in Mississippi since I've come back has been, I gotta say I'm proud of it. And saying I'm proud of my work is hard. Like, but I'm proud of what I did in the last 5 years.
Right. Of course, you should. Right.
Gotta be proud of that shit, bro. But
right.
You know, there's some other things that I gave up to do that work. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like I don't have some things I need to be healthy because I committed too much to that work. That ain't Mississippi's fault though. That's all on me.
Well, yeah. So when we think about, I know the broader audience, though we can't see them, is Mississippi State students who will be listening in, and, particularly the black students. I mean, given this whole idea we've been talking about of education and miseducation, what are some things you might want to just have students to think through as they're going through, getting a college degree from a 4-year university in the state of Mississippi, PWI? What are some things you might want to think through? I got a lot of them too, man, but I know it's deep.
You got some? Let me hear what you got first.
Okay. Oh, all right, man. All right. So, I mean, my thing is, to be honest, and I didn't really start doing this until my 3rd year because, I'm raised in a family. My mom and daddy say, man, you say yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. You do what you need to do. You get on out of there. So I'm just playing by the book. But, thankfully, I got a little bit of a platform when I won a scholarship and got to, people were starting to listen to me a little more. And I started to realize, like, man, I would tell the students, your professors need to be teaching you black history because that's what they're getting paid for. And so if you go to any class, and if you can ask any professor in any field, I don't care if it don't got nothing to do with quote unquote black history, if they can't tell you how it relates to black people, give them a bad review and call them out on it. Because the thing is, that's their job. I didn't do it till my 3rd, 4th year. I didn't start doing it. If the library don't have a book on black history, especially one in Mississippi, what y'all doing? What we got 10 copies of every Faulkner book?
No.
And we can't. So
bro.
I would tell the students to, and the sad thing, they shouldn't even have to do it. That's the first thing. That's the first. But the thing is, like you said, we come from a people who have always had that rich history of resistance. And so that's the thing I would say, man, is just follow up. And the professors are getting paid to give you an education that relates to your experience. And you need to make sure they're doing it. And a lot of them aren't.
None of them are. You know what I mean? Like at my school. And what's interesting is like how those of us who are part of these institutions, even when we fight back in these institutions, we do this thing where we try to protect the institution.
Right.
And often that means like white folk who have done wrong by us. Right. We think we try to protect those people, and I understand why. But like, if you, for example, taught at a place like, let's say University of Mississippi, right? Which has this history of like neo-Confederacy, for example.
There it is.
And if you were in an English department that, fancies itself very like radical or liberal or whatever, if there was a semester where, numerous white teachers, for whatever reason, started to use the word nigga in classes, and black grad students and black undergrads, sometimes the black grad students are in those classes, and those black grad students have a lot to say about that, right? You if you're in that classroom, like the entire department needs to do more than just like sensitivity training. The entire department needs to talk about their investment in the belief that the nigga construction is real, right? Like there's no way like seasoned teachers should be using words like that, no matter who's in front of them, without talking about the context of the word, right? Like, and if you do the education that you're talking about, we can do that work. But it's hard to do that work, fam, when everybody wants to pat themselves on the back for being innocent because they can read. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing I want my students or any student in Mississippi to understand.
Right.
The fact that you are reading is, I guess, a privilege, but all privileges aren't healthy. The fact that you're reading does not make you just. It doesn't make you caring. It doesn't make you loving. It doesn't make you remotely like a good partner. It doesn't make you a good son. It doesn't make you like reading doesn't do any of those things in and of itself. So you and we have to move with this shit we read and step and choose to step in the directions of justice. But it's hard to do that when you think the act of reading and writing make you better people in and of itself. Bullshit. The primary architects of terror in this nation, with the exception of Donald Trump, could read and write fairly well. Right. Exception of Trump, and I'll say a Bush. But reading and writing is not the panacea. What you read and write and what you do with that reading and writing is, that's what I would say.
Yo, that's deep. I try to tell people at Harvard this all the time, man. I'm like, listen, y'all looking down, like you said, we know we can both critique every university in Mississippi as much as we want to. And I always tell them, listen, Harvard done more damage to black people than Mississippi State and Ole Miss ever have. Like you're saying, because they had all the money and power.
That's one of the reasons that I did that thing that I did at the joint the other day. Right. And that's when I'm talking about coming home with something. Right. You know, like if I was a junior person, I'm silly enough, I probably would have tried that, but the consequences would have been dire. You know what I mean? Right. But like but I'm now at a position in my place in my life or inside my heart where like I'm not going to do stuff just to provoke. I'm going to do the kind of art that I really want to do that's going to fortify me and people who love me. And I'm especially going to do that if it's a space that hasn't had that kind of like artistic black production before. Right. But there's a price to pay for that. And I think we who are in these positions have to make sure that there's not a price to pay, that there's like a lauding for that kind of art. But it's not. Right now, it's still not. You do that kind of shit, you throw out, you do artistic shit that tells the truth publicly, institutions going to try to get you.
Wow. Well, just for context,
I want it to not be that way. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no. Just for context, Kiese just read a short story at Radcliffe Institute at Harvard, and y'all can look it up online. But it was amazing. So that's what he was talking about. But speaking on these relationships, you were talking about, it's kind of in the subtext, this relationship with you and Nicole. And I mean, at the end, are you gesturing towards this thing you were just talking about in terms of sometimes writing is not always the best for relationships? You say, I'm sorry for being a dick, but I just want to read it right before going to bed. As I was reading, I'm like, and again, this may be a problem with me. It's hard to see what you did wrong. So I was trying to figure out what you did. I'm not asking you, of course, to get the details, but what I'm asking is just in terms of what's kind of going on with this relationship between writing and the ways in which, like you were saying, sometimes you can harm people while you're writing, and kind of just, what were some of the things you might have been trying to get at?
Man, damn, thank you for being a good reader, fam, or a diligent reader. Yeah,
I didn't know what you did wrong, man, but maybe that's because I'm making the same mistake.
It was a larger context, and the larger context was like, at that point in my life, first of all, like, we were in a relationship, like, we met in college after I transferred, and we were together because we thought we were really good people. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't that like mad passionate thing where we go, you know what I mean? Like we were just like, yo, we gonna be squad forever. Yeah. And we weren't, and we ended up not being squad forever, but it felt that way. But yeah, like my thing even back then was, when people who like me or love me will be wanting to fucking talk or even asking about me, I'd be like, I'm good, close the door, let me do my work. And I think that that helped create good work, but like relationships, I think maybe more important than art and work. Right. And it was bad for that relationship, and it's been bad for other relationships in my life. You can't, there's a consequence because it's selfish. Like there's a consequence to always choosing your art when people who love you are like, I know you choose your art all the time at this, but like I'm gonna need you to really choose me. Right. And at different times in my life, I wasn't making that choice. I wasn't making a healthy choice. I was choosing selfishly to fucking close the door, go in my room and try to create some shit that was exploring the emotions and shit I should have been talking about. I think I've gotten better at that, but I was definitely terrible at that as a younger person. Yeah.
Wow. Well, man, I just say, man, just thinking about, and there's been people who've done it before you, but for me, you were the first person that was a black man, and then of course definitely from Mississippi, who again is who talks about relationships with women, and doesn't have that kind of heteronormative vibe to it, to where that I was raised on as a straight black man. I just I was always behind on the gender parts. It took a while to get there, and then to see you do it, I was like, wow, I'd never seen a black man do this before. And I mean, I'm from Vicksburg, but I'm saying, I just said, and my thing, and of course, we have beautiful queer people who have done that work that we don't even know their names. So that's the sad thing about that part of it, is we don't even know their names, and we kind of erase that whole history. But, but even still, going to Vicksburg High School, going through the school, it wasn't done. And so, for me, I mean, what was that process like, or was it natural, or like did it take, what kind of work did it take to get to that level, man? Because I mean, I'm just trying to catch up with you. I'm like, let me read some more. Let me read some more books, man, and get it right, man.
Wow. You asking tough questions, fam.
Yeah.
I think we got to be careful, like, because the bar's so low for us.
It is. Yeah.
That I used to say, if you trip over the bar, people treat you like you flying.
Right.
And that's true.
Yeah.
But if you just describe the bar, nigga, like motherfuckers will act like you liberated and like super thoughtful just by describing the bar, just by describing how low the bar is. Fuck if you like trip over the bar or use the bar to hurt people. It's just sometimes like we're so hungry to see particular kind of people do work on the page or publicly, and when it's done, I just think sometimes we have to remember that public work is a kind of work and labor. And the hardest work in labor comes in like how you operationalize that work in your relationships. And so I'm never gonna stand up on no fucking stage and be like, you know, I mean, I was a fat black boy growing up. I have not had a lot of romantic relationships in my life, like because no matter where I was with my weight, I always thought I was a fat black boy, right? When girls or boys or whoever would tell me that they liked me, I don't give a fuck who it is would tell me they would like me. My response was always like, "Stop lying, nigga." You know what I mean? Like, right. But I'm saying all that to say, I think my orientation, like as a young person growing up, was a little different than some other people, you know. And so what I think we gotta understand as cis men is like, even if we not out there, fam, like, you know, I can say never in my life I have never. I mean, people probably disagree with me, but like I have done the work and thought about. I don't think I've ever attempted to initiate in a relationship. And that don't mean you're not abusive.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
I think we got to do all the work, fam. Like you cannot initiate a relationship and not press sex and not press kissing and not do any of these things and be abusive to people. And so I just think we use the wrong metric. We're like, you know, she said yes, she said no, I didn't start it. Motherfucker, are you being abusive?
Right.
Are you being abusive? Yes. The probably yes. So let's talk about. Like you talk about that with whomever is safe to. I don't think that work is always public work.
Of course.
But I think we need to be doing that work in private, fam. And what I'm saying is like when you say shit like that, people think you've done the work, so you hear. But what I'm saying is every single day, we have to think about how we're gonna share, how we're gonna be kind, how we're gonna be tender. And if we talk about cisgender black men, we got to think about the ways that we have been encouraged to be as fucked up as white folks are to themselves and to black people. We've been encouraged to be that like that to ourselves and to women and to girls and to genderqueer people. You know what I'm saying? So like, that's the work, fam. Don't put a nigga up on no pedestal for wanting to do the work. Judge me by how or if I'm able to do the work, but I know that is the work. And I just think we have to attempt to talk about our successes and our failures at what the work is, but not laud people for describing the work. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Wow, man. Well, I mean, I know you're saying you're still a work in progress, but it just means a lot that you have opened up the conversation, and to come from somebody who has the privilege in terms of those gender dynamics to still do that, man, it means a lot. I'm curious about the epigraph. I always pay attention to epigraphs. I mean, I know you and Jasmine be pulling out the best epigraphs in the world, man.
Jasmine be pulling out the bomb epigraph, bro.
Yeah, but you know, you talk about in Imani Perry, you don't tell all the secrets when you're trying to get free. So for you all who have the book, that's what comes at the very beginning. Obviously, I mean, you're not going to tell the secrets, but what was the reasoning behind that epigraph? Just in terms of, and maybe what was the context even that Imani said it in, or do you remember?
Yeah, we were talking. It was at the beginning of the pandemic, or maybe like June. And we were talking about we did a Zoom about breathe, and we were just talking. And you know what's crazy, bro? Like a lot of people, when you look back at that time, like it's so blurry because you know like students were dying and family was dying, and you think you finna die. But Imani was talking about really she was talking about this idea of like, you know, what we show, what we give, and how it's used to titillate and whatnot, and how we need to be very thoughtful about like when we write, what we write. And really she was just saying like secrets can titillate and secrets can, you know, line pockets, but you don't tell all the secrets if you're trying to get free, because there are people who are listening who have every intention of making you be unfree. But what I love about that quote is like, you don't tell all the secrets if you're trying to get free, but I do think you explore all those secrets or you cannot be free. And so the counter to like the the complement to that question, I think, is how to slowly kill yourself and others. I'm not about to tell y'all all of the secrets,
Right.
but I'm about to explore some of the secrets in an attempt to get me and maybe a few other people free. But nah, I'm not telling. That's what I just said about, I've never talked to anybody publicly about my family's relationships to carcerality, guns, shooting police officers, and
Right.
shit like that. And I'm not gonna do it. I'm not
Of
gonna do it. I'm
course.
not gonna write. I mean, I've written it, but I'm not gonna share that with people until I think everybody I'm writing about is gonna be safe. So
Right.
I just think that needs to be done, especially the kind of writing I do. It's just
Right.
like you never tell everything. First of all, that's bad writing. Like
Yeah,
this
there it
is an
is.
art to this shit. You know, I ain't
Yeah.
just trying to get up there and just throw up, nigga. Like I got to move
Right.
that shit around so you can want to get up in there. You know, so nah, like confessing is confessing, but that's not great art making.
Right. Right. Nah, man, that makes sense. That makes sense. So you talk about at the end. You go to the you go back to your room. You start writing before you go to bed, and you talk about this. You're going to use that day as a fuel to finish a chapter I was writing about 4 kids from Mississippi who time traveling through a hole in the ground. And so, just thinking about it, I know I think you're working on Long Division to republish it, right?
Yeah, it's coming out in June. It's done.
Okay, and so I mean, I know we're kind of coming up on time. I love to just kind of hear you talk about that work's relationship to this work, and so we can know when to buy that book when it comes out again too. So.
Oh, all right, fam. So it's coming out June 1st. And when I initially published that book, like I said before, I tell the people, like I thought it was like a big experiment, but I wanted it to be 2 books. It wasn't. And if it was gonna be 1 book, it was gonna be like you read it. It's gonna be an adult flip book. You read it and then you flip it and then you read from the back. So you read 2 books in one, because the book to me is a book within a book within a book.
Right.
But it was hard for people to get the feeling I wanted them to get, the way it was like the other publisher made 2 books like be intertwined like that. And so.
Right.
One thing is changed is that like the art on the cover of the book, like the book begins when you see the art on the cover. Like the actual art is a part of the text. And there's 2 covers to this book. Like there's a cover on the front, you flip it, a front cover on the front, you flip it, there's another front cover, but there's lots of clues and mysteries on that cover. And the books just, I think, now complement each other a bit more in the way that I wanted them to. I think when I talked to the previous publisher about complimenting them, they took that as like they wanted them to be like this. But I wanted them to be like this and like this. You know what I'm saying? Like one
Right.
book here and then like one book right here.
Right.
And again, this shit that only matters to me. But much more importantly, that book is going to be in the world long after I'm gone.
Yeah.
And the person who I collaborated with was someone who I feel like didn't respect me or the people that I come from. And didn't really have any integrity, and so I wanted to get that book back, put it out in the world the way I wanted it to, make the money that comes from that book. I wanted most of the money to come to me and not like 90% of it to go to someone who only paid $1,000 or whatever, $3,000 for it. And so like that to me, revising these books is more about like the larger project I'm working on, which is a 7-book thing, but also the fact that like we gonna be dead. And if when I'm dead, I want Black kids in Mississippi to read that version of that book, not that other version,
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's the thing, man. I see so many parallels between some of the things you talk about with the publishing industry and the same things, back to where we started with the music and David Banner, and the same struggles they had. Every time we Black Mississippians from New York, we get up to New York, man, and it ain't never what we thought it was gonna be, man. It's never what we thought it was gonna be. And so I appreciate you for fighting battles for people that's gonna come after you to kind of open up a lane for us, man. And I appreciate you for taking time for us down here at Mississippi State. And I wish you a good rest of the day. I'm gonna try to hop on to see you and Regina Bradley talk later. So.
Oh, Phil, bro. You know how Bun talk about G and a genius, bro? Like that's who you are to me. And you are the little man at Shithall Station to me, fam. So like all love, bro. This has been a wonderful time. And also I want to thank African American Studies. I want to thank English for making this happen at Mississippi State. Thank y'all for being so kind and just being wonderful folks.
Oh man, appreciate it, man. You have a good day, Kiese.
All right, thank you, Phil.
All right, man.